I think I started out by telling them what our grand purpose is, just kind of reminding them. I've mentioned it a few times. They haven't actually seen it. It is up on the website for them to see the project, but I don't think anyone's gone there yet. But just kind of saying, you know, we're doing this Pacific Islands, Hawaiian history content for social studies, and for Q2 our big project is going to be to create this newspaper, pre-Western contact. You know, I kind of told them that, and I think that's like, oh, okay, whatever, that's too far away, I don't know what you're talking about. And then so I told them, so in order to get ready for that, we need to do, we need to figure out what a newspaper is. And so then I brought it to something more current and more tangible. So I did kind of set up the broad picture, where we're going, where's our future. But I think, especially for them, that's too far. So just letting them know that it's there, this is what our end goal is, that was done. The essential question, setting that up in the beginning so they kind of see the purpose of what today's lesson is. So the purpose is just to try and see how the newspaper influences a community. As I went through the lesson, I didn't say it to every single person because I don't think they were all ready to hear it, but I had a really good conversation with one of the groups, and they were talking about how the newspaper was different or affecting them or changing them. And I didn't give them the answer. I didn't make the connection for them, but I told them, remember this conversation because we're gonna use it for later on. So I want them to kind of see like different things. Just physically, so they were like getting lost. They didn't know where things were. Where are the editorials? Like we'll look in the table of contents, and it didn't specifically say editorial. So they're so used to just Googling editorial and then just instantly comes to them. They're not used to having to actually look and see and analyze what's the layout, what's the setup. So I think, you know, kind of getting them to just get the experience, and then we'll take a step back and we'll kind of reflect, okay, so what did you find? What was hard? What was easy? And then connecting it back. So it's kind of going back and forth for them. I think it was important. My practice was most effective for the students was the ease of dialogue that we had in the beginning, that discussion. I had pre-scripted questions that I wanted them to go through, but as we went, the kids had really great insights, really great observations, really great questions, and so I included some of their things. I adapted. One thing that I had not anticipated at all, thinking about, was literally, have any of you been in the newspaper? And tons of them have been in the newspaper. So then we kind of narrowed down, well, who's been on the front page? And a bunch of them had been on the front page. And so that was an amazing connection because, boom, that was relevance and connection. Because it's now the newspaper is not something for other people, it's something for me, or if not, something that my classmate, my neighbor right here has been in. So it made that connectivity way better for the students. Huge organization, prior organization, I think was very, very important. I tend to just have like a grand idea of what I want to do, and I kind of know what I need to do, but sometimes I still wing it. But this one, I really wanted to be specific in what I did. I noticed I'm new to teaching 7th grade this year. I'm used to teaching 9th grade. I've done that for 10 years. So the 7th grade, I know they need a lot more structure. I need to be really tight. I have to have a tight ship. I have to know exactly what I'm going to do. So I did move the tables. I moved the tables because I knew I wanted them to be in small groups. We were previously in a giant round circle that the students really enjoyed, but for the purposes of dialoguing with the group members and kind of checking out each other's work, definitely felt the tables were better. It's also easier for me to walk around. So I wanted to be able to walk around and talk to each table and check on them. In the circle, it's a little bit more awkward. So the table movement was important. Setting up the order of my things. I definitely wanted to give them some background information. I wanted to give them some kind of engagement. I wanted to do the scavenger hunt, but I wasn't sure which order to do that in. So sitting down and figuring that out was really important. So I ended up doing the definitions in the latter half, because I thought if I just throw definitions at them, they won't be engaged, so they won't even know what these things are or why they need them. I thought it was better to just start with themselves first. What is your personal interaction with the newspaper? Then let them have the newspaper hunt. And then as it pops up, questions that they're not sure of, things that they don't understand, What is an editorial? That was probably the biggest one. What's an editorial? Nobody knew what that was. So that's one of the vocab words that we'll be going through. I also, just this morning, thought of adding a pre-write. So that I think was really beneficial, giving them a chance to process the essential question, giving them a chance to just kind of write down, get connected, get centered. So even if it has something to do with content, just being a student. So here we are, we're going to start the lesson. What's my connection to this lesson? Jotting down my ideas. It's going to be really great feedback for them when they see before the lesson, this is what I knew. After the lesson, this is what I know. And so they can see their own personal growth. So I think that's really important. So pre-writing is not something that I always do, but for this situation, I thought it would be beneficial. And I think that that was a good call. So I mean, as of this morning, I was still changing things. In regards to student engagement, I think this lesson went really well. I was super pleased. Students who don't always talked. I don't know if it's because the camera was here, but I didn't think that they were playing to the camera. The students who usually raise their hand, they were raising their hand, but I did see a lot of engagement, even if they weren't physically speaking, just at the tables, just kind of looking at things, talking to each other, checking out who's been in the newspaper. So I didn't see anyone just sitting there, pretend hood over themselves, totally out of our discussion. Everybody was involved. I saw some students who don't normally talk. They had something to say, so then they were talking even just at their tables. So I thought it was really, really well. Sometimes they would get a little bit too excited and get a little bit too off task, but they're really, really good about, focusing in. They might need a couple reminders, coming back to focus. And then we were able to differentiate between what they're talking about and what I wanted to talk about. So one example was we were talking about the newspaper, and we kind of got off on the tangent of the news, and they started talking about the news. And so I was able to bring them back and say, that's great. Definitely we have newspaper and TV news. Well, what is our focus today? And they all said, newspaper. So I'm like, okay, let's bring it back to newspaper. But I think still honoring the fact that the news is an element where we get the same type of information. And for me, just processing that, I was thinking, this is definitely a point that I'll need to make, where we've got these different venues of receiving information now. What's the difference? Compare and contrast them, analyze them. What's better? What's worse? Why is this one good? What situations is this one good, better, or worse? So as they go through the discussion and as I see them going off on tangents, then it helps for me to change my practice to fit more of what they're needing to find out. I would love to think that they thought it was completely relevant and completely meaningful. I think that I honestly don't know if they got the meaning and the relevance completely yet. I do see them having engagement with the newspaper. So as we progress the next couple of lessons, that's when I will be able to take them deeper into their understanding of why we're utilizing the newspaper. It's not just to check out the sports scores, right? We're actually analyzing what elements are in the newspaper, why they're there, and how the newspaper portrays a society, which goes to their grand summative project of portraying the Polynesian society. So what articles will we need to create that will show a layperson, someone back in America, what Samoa is like? What elements are we going to talk about? Are we going to talk about sports and the lava flow? What are we going to talk about? And that way, someone in a different country will look at it and be like, oh, I understand what life is like there. So this lesson is part of a grander lesson. So it was my introduction. So definitely I'm going to see what they needed today. I think they need the definition, so we're going to continue with that. I think I need to go deeper in the connecting and showing them how it disconnects to the grand picture of analyzing the Polynesian society and choosing elements of the culture to put into their topic. I plan already today was just superficial. It was just like tearing up the newspaper and seeing what's in there, looking for the cartoon, looking for a sports score. So their next step is they're going to have one single newspaper article, and they're going to kind of analyze just that specific article. And then over the weekend, because they have a 4-day weekend, they're going to take their newspaper and they're going to look for articles that's connected to the FREPA topics. So on Friday, we're going to look at FREPA. So what is family? What is religion? What's the keywords that are related to it? What are the topics? So I have a handout for them with all the like subcategories under it. So it would be family, religion, education, economics, politics, and art. And so their next task is not just to superficially look at the newspaper, but to look at the cultural pieces of evidence that they can find in the newspaper related to FREPA.